My name is Zamar. I wrote this book, and I haven't got a video set up. I haven't got any fancy microphones or anything like that, but I wanted to make a mid year Freakout tag. So that's what we're going to do, and we're going to see how it goes, and it might be a disaster. Okay, so number one is the best book you've read so far in 2024. For me, Fool's Assassin takes the cake. Robin Hobb has this way of starting series that makes you feel like you're coming home. I have, I read this back in January, and I got all these fond memories of huddling up near the fireplace, feeling like I was right there with Fitz. If you know the setting this book is in, then I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. I think this is one of the most perfect Realm of the Elderlings books. There's these atmosphere and vibes, and there's this sense of impending dread because you know things are going to go wrong, they always do, right? And at the same time, you get that slice of life feeling that you had in Fool's Errand. There's a couple of new characters. One of them is definitely a standout, and seeing that character was so precious. It was like what they told us about the story and the perspective they give us on the existing characters that we're already so attached to. It was amazing. This was, for me, an almost perfect book. It's one of my absolute favorites of all time. I loved Fool's Assassin. So I've got two honorable mentions here. The first one is going to be Excalibur, which is the third book in the Warlord Chronicles. What a series. What an incredible ending. I was teary eyed reading the final passages of that book. It had maybe the best battle sequence I've ever read. And by this point in the story, like you just feel so attached to the characters, and the stakes felt so real. I'm not that familiar with the Arthurian legend. I think I'd forgotten most of it, so the series as a whole just felt really fresh to me, and I love that. The ending was just, there was a sense of melancholy, and I think that's like the essence of the Arthurian legend. You had some resolution for the framing narrative, like the future timeline, and then you're kind of set up for all these turbulent times in history, in British history, that you know are going to come afterwards. And Durfel, my man Durfel, what a character. Um, the other honorable mention, which I'm going to say, is the book that I'm listening to right now, and that's Shogun by James Clavell. I'm in the last fifth or so of this book, and I'm just like dragging my feet because I don't want it to end. Shogun has been brilliant. There's such a wonderfully intimate story. It's full of dialogue, political scheming, and these awesome characters like Blackthorn, Mariko, Torunaga. This is maybe like the best use of the omniscient narrator style that I've ever read. I'm absolutely loving it. It's definitely gonna go in my top reads of the year for sure. Okay, we're gonna move on to number two, which is the best sequel you've read so far in 2024. And I have to go back to the Warlord Chronicles because Enemy of God was amazing. Like, I know I picked Excalibur for my favorite, but it's kind of like I loved all three books. It's so close. It's like a hair's breadth between them. Enemy of God was powerful, man, especially the ending. Like, damn, that hit hard. It hit so hard, right in the feels, and hit hard. I loved it. All right, we're just gonna move on quickly then. So number three, a new release you haven't read yet, but you want to. So, to be honest, I haven't kept up to date with new releases because I feel like I'm just in this catch up mode. Just trying to catch up with a bunch of books that were released over the past few years, and I like binging books, so I tend to read older series just so I could read all of them at once. The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. So I've been eyeing this author for a while. And I think his Foundryside series is the other one he has, which seemed really interesting. And this book in particular caught my attention because it seems like there's these immaculate vibes and this very unique world building. I definitely want to check it out. Let me know if you've read it. I've heard good things. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year. That's tag number four. I'm gonna be boring. It's gotta be Wind and Truth. Book 5 of Stormlight Archive, right? Like, does anyone have a different answer? Come on. All right. Number 5, biggest disappointment of the year so far. For me, this was The Sword of Kaigen. I know people love this book. I'm really happy for them. It just didn't gel for me. I think there were some really awesome scenes, but I felt like overall the dialogue felt a bit overdone, felt cheesy to me, a bit cringy sometimes even. It tended to take me out of the story. And then there were these world building choices which I just didn't like the units of time and all that stuff. Again, I love that people love this book. It's just not the one for me. Another contender, which I was thinking about earlier, is The Faithful and the Fallen, which I listened to back in January. And don't get me wrong, I enjoyed those books, but they're so beloved and they're so hyped that I guess like the hype just kind of got to me, and my expectations were really high and they just weren't met. I think Malice surprisingly would have been my favorite, but I did not like the prose. That book was so, it just read so clunky. It kept taking me out of the story. And I think the writing got better. Like, it was a debut novel, so you would hope that it does get better. And by the end of the series, it was okay, and maybe I just got used to it. But by then, I was just tired of the running and fighting. It's like running and fighting, and then more running and fighting, and more running and fighting. But I mean, they were great characters. You know, Corbin and the crew, and like an amazing found family, and I liked that like the characters actually had discussions about their emotions for once. It was really grown up and great to see and fresh. I love how much people love the series. It's also just not for me. So, favorite new author, that's tag number 6. I think Bernard Cornwell or James Clavell fit it best. I've already talked about how much I love their books. I'm planning to read their entire bibliographies at this point, but I've already talked about them. So we're gonna say Susanna Clark, and that's just from Piranesi, because it's this short little book, and I just fell in love with her writing. Her prose, it's like, it's simple, it's elegant, yet it's powerful. It's ripe with subtext and full of character voice. There's just way too much. It's a tiny little book, and there's so much packed into it. I really want to read Doctor Strange and Mr. Norrell, I think is her other book. I'm very excited to read that one. Alright, number 7 is the biggest surprise of the year. And for me, this one was the Abhorsen trilogy by Garth Nix. For some reason, I thought these books were written for a younger audience, and I think they are. But at the same time, there was surprisingly dark themes, and there's just spectacular storytelling. I absolutely love them. Sabriel, that's the first book. I think that's my favorite. It's really tightly plotted. It's got this awesome main character, and really unique world building. This wonderful exploration of life and death, and then just the coming of age themes of like growing into your responsibility. The sequels are slower paced, and you spend more time developing the characters, but the stakes become higher, and like they're also excellent. I love them. So number 8 is a book that made you happy. So for me, this is The Black Tongue Thief is what I wrote down for this one. It's a dark book, and it's not happy per se, but it's got this really strong sense of character voice, and Kinch is a really funny protagonist. It's fast paced, it's swashbuckling, and there's a lot of humor unexpectedly in it, and it's just like this non-stop ludicrousness, but it never ventures into absurdity like Hitchhiker's Guide or Discworld or something like that. So I really like it. I want to read The Daughter's War soon as well. Okay, newest fictional crush. That's number 9. Lady Isabella Trent. My goodness, I read the first 3 of her memoirs so far, and what a woman! I love these books because, again, there's this framing narrative. I can't get enough of framing narratives, and the books just feel so cozy and fun. The stakes are generally low, but they're full of adventure, and more importantly, Lady Trent is such a colorful character. Like, you read these books for her, and I love following her and seeing her change, and I love her older, like, framing, snarky old woman voice, and she's got so much agency, and she doesn't stand for what society expects of her. She's the very definition of a go-getter. I love to see it. Wonderfully written character. I love her voice. Just love Lady Trent. Alright, newest favorite character. That's number 10. It's almost the same, isn't it? This one, I would probably say Durfel from Warlord Chronicles. And I think one of my favorite things about the series was just seeing his change over the course of many years. It was done so subtly, and it was masterful. Because he goes from being this young boy, and he's in awe of his mentors and lords, and he becomes, like, you just don't even notice it happening, but over time you realize he's becoming a grown man. He's, like, increasing his agency, his responsibility, and his personal desires are taking form and shape, and they contradict his duty and how he deals with those situations. He's a really cool character. Absolute badass, and yet he's so earnest and endearing. Like, it's so hard to not get behind Durfel. Alright, we're going to number 11, which is a book that made you cry, and I'm going to reach over here and grab Assassin's Fate. think I was also pretty teary-eyed in Fool's Quest and Fool's Assassin, but the ending of this series, it just really touched me. You know, I love Fitz and the Fool, but I also had some issues with it, to be honest, and especially these final two books. I think the series as a whole is probably my second lowest rank in Realm of the Elderlings. Like, I would say Tawny Man first, then Farseer, then Live Ships, and then Fitz and the Fool, and then Rain Wilds. So this was not a perfect book, but in so many ways it was a perfect ending. You know, like I got very emotional to say goodbye to these characters, and it's by 16 books in, like you've come to love them so much. It feels like you've lived a lifetime with them, and then closing that last chapter, it's hard. It's hard, and it leaves you with a book hangover, and I couldn't get over it for like a month. Like I just found it really hard to enjoy my reading. So it was probably this one. I love Assassin's Fate. Love Robin Hobb. Okay, number 12 is the most beautiful book you've bought so far this year. So, following up with that Robin Hobb love, I had to get the special editions for Realm of the Elderlings, and these are the only special editions I have. So it has to be a special series for me to get a special edition of it, right? I got all three. My Royal Assassin one arrived damaged, so I returned it, and I haven't ordered a new one yet, but I will do that soon. So for now, I just have 1 and 3. And this one's Assassin's Quest, and I'm actually an Assassin's Quest defender. I don't know why everyone hates on it. I think it's a great book. But yeah, these illustrated editions are just beautiful. I love them, and I'm not going to open them and show the pictures inside because they're stunning, but they're also kind of spoilery. So I'm not going to do that. All right, and so last and final tag: what books do you need to read by the end of the year? So first of all, Ben from Benji's Con gave me a TBR that I have to get through. So I'm reading A Song of Achilles right now and really liking it. I think the prose is wonderful in that book, and I was reading it the other day and I felt like I was getting lost in the words, and that's exactly what you want. So I'm going to see how that goes. Hopefully it's good. I'll be reading Becoming a Druid by Mike Molman on audio, and then The Magicians on audio as well. And then if those three, I don't like any of those three, that's Ben's fault. It's got nothing to do with me, right? After those, I'll be reading Jade Legacy. So I read the first 2 Greenbone Saga books, and so I'm excited to continue with that. And then after that, I really want to catch up on self-pub books. So I want to read Tori Tekken's Bloodstones, Philip Chase's Idan trilogy, P.L. Stewart's Drowned Kingdom, and Crystal Matar's Legacy of the Brightwash. Those are on my must-read list for this year for sure. So I'm excited for that. If you made it this far, thank you so much. I don't really know what I'm doing when it comes to YouTube and videos and etc. This is very much an experiment. It's kind of impulsive. I just saw Ben's video and I was like, I want to try it. So let me know what you think. Is it good, bad, or not? And yeah, have a great weekend, everyone.